Yeah, it was definitely helpful to see it after.
Yeah, like because when we're talking, we're kind of talking with each other, and you're in it, and then to hear it later, it's like getting a different. You get separation from what we're talking about, and sometimes it's easier to understand when you give yourself a little separation. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's funny because it doesn't sound like me either.
I know. You just gotta and you're hearing it from the phone, and so anyway, tell me where you're at. It's been 24 hours since our consult. It was intense, we kind of went right into don't you agree, the core of what you're going to need to do to recover?
Yeah, so where am I? It's just, I don't know. I'm really, I sat down and I was talking to my boyfriend, and he actually used the baseball analogy, and he referred to you as the closer. You're like the Mariano Rivera.
That's hilarious. Well, it's kind of like, now we're going to get it done.
Huh?
Now we're going to get it done. Let's finish this.
Yeah, that's what he said. Like IOP served the purpose. And,
yeah, it did.
And now you're here and you're ready. And Robin is Mariano Rivera.
That's hilarious. That is so funny. I'm going to tell that to my husband. He'll get a kick out of that. Okay, so were there anything in the consult after watching it on your own? I'm assuming you did that last night or this morning?
I did it last night.
Yeah. Was there anything that you had, I want to go over that again? I need her to explain that again. Was there anything?
Well, yes, in the sense that, yes and no. I suppose, I do have concerns about how, like you were saying, that the PCOS is a result of my stress.
Yes, it absolutely. PCOS is, one way to look at this is that is a syndrome. Okay, do you know what a syndrome is?
Tell me.
It's when there's a combination of things that people see together. Okay, so polycystic ovarian syndrome. What that means is they're seeing that you have high testosterone combined with symptoms and some insulin resistance combined with, hair loss and all these symptoms combined. And so when you combine them together, they call it a syndrome. So it's a combination of symptoms that they've given a name. So here's a bunch of symptoms that we see commonly, and when we see them together, we're going to just call it this name. That's why it's called a syndrome. So it's not a disease. It isn't, a virus. It isn't bacteria. It's not specific. It's a combination of these things. And PCOS is something they're still really looking at. And so when you look at your symptoms and you look at your mind and your state of being, you could look at that and say, well, my state of being is in extreme fight or flight. I am in extreme symptoms of survival mode. It's not just I'm stressed out. There's extremism in your stress, right? And you could say your behavior is and we went through this, look at how you behave to compensate to feel better. That's an indication when I say it's extreme, it's radical. it's not within a normal range. And you could look at how your state of being is, and it would predict that you're going to have high testosterone. You're going to have some anorexic physical symptoms too, like not producing enough, feedback from the ovaries. You're not going to, and so this is common as well in binge eaters. So it's kind of like this and anorexics. I've seen it on both sides. Now, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a practitioner. I am a student. I'm a student of eating disorders, and I'm a student of body and physiology, right? So, and I am somewhat of an expert with eating disorders specifically. So it's a niche expertise that I have, right? In relation to how it works emotionally, okay? But when you look at the body and how it responds to fight or flight, stress, cortisol, like when you're in survival mode, when your body thinks you're under threat, your symptoms are kind of like, yeah, that's what happens with the body when it's been in that state for a chronic period of time. And with the influx of binge eating as well. So take binging combined with stress. So something to look at is with stress, it's normal and it's expected for your liver to break down glycogen. And when it breaks down glycogen, that's an energy store. It produces glucose. So it's called gluconeogenesis. Okay. So that's the body's ability to create glucose for the blood, for blood sugar purposes. And that's what happens. And that's something that's been studied and understood for actually a long time now. Gluconeogenesis. Look it up, right? And it's stress is a major factor in it. Okay. And so when I'm under stress, my blood sugar goes up. I actually had diabetes when a few years ago. I had moved 5 times in 5 years. And I went and I was like, now that I've kind of settled in, I need to get my blood work done. I'm just curious. And it came back with massive flashing red lights. You have to come in. This was a huge deal. And I just ignored it. Why? Because I knew how stressed I had been just from moving across the country over the course of 5 years. I moved 5 times. And so I thought, I'm just going to give it a break and I'll go back in. Come to find out, a year later, when my results came back perfectly normal, that I had diabetes. Stress. I knew it was stress-induced. Problem is, most people, the amount of money made in pharmaceuticals to say it's linked to your fat, it's way more lucrative than to say you need to reduce your stress, because that will actually reduce the cause, or at least one of the causes that we're aware of. So again, if you look at your symptoms and you see what you're doing in your state of mind, it would be weird if you didn't have those symptoms. I would think you're not human if you didn't have high cortisol, high blood sugar. Make sense?
Yeah.
High testosterone levels. It would make sense to me. I think the issue is that you're not necessarily they're looking at your food and not your stress. So what I'm saying is, of course, I'm not saying you don't have PCOS. It's a bunch of symptoms that you have, but those are common symptoms for people with eating disorders. So what do you think will happen to those symptoms if we go into the source of that your state of mind?
Well, diminish.
Well, that would be the hope, that you're no longer creating the cause. And modern medicine wasn't created to be preventative and to solve the world's problems and causes. Modern medicine was actually created to fix damages that are done, or and so when you look at something like PCOS, they're looking at the end result, and they're looking at variety of symptoms that they're clumping together. And then they give you a label. And then they give you metformin. and then they say you need to keep your glucose under this amount. Not really understanding the psychological impact of your beliefs around thinness and how that has completely distorted your relationship with food as the cause, or as what's promoting it, versus just the singular cause. It's a promotion of this outcome physically. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes sense. That was like the one thing that was like lingering, and then
is it your fear?
Also,
is it your fear of it?
Yeah, like
Okay.
I'm a little afraid that maybe it's just an excuse. If I just eat like whatever I want, then obviously that's not going to help.
Well, you're correct if you don't change your way of thinking. You're correct. If you stay in this type of extreme fear of gaining weight, and that fear projects into anxiety with food, imagine how that's going to manifest if you're physically having fight or flight while you're eating food. Keep in mind, fight or flight stimulates gluconeogenesis. So you're experiencing diabetes while you're eating food because of the extreme fear you have of food. That is in direct relation to your fear of PCOS, which is really, and you kind of called yourself out on it. This really has more to do with kind of an excuse. I love that you said that first. Because it's like, really, you really care about your diabetes? And no, you don't. You're more concerned about gaining weight.
Yeah, it's true. Because
I know.
I have one meal plan from the PCOS nutritionist, and then I have a different meal plan from the IOP nutritionist, and they worked with each other, and the PCOS nutritionist just said, listen, do whatever the IOP nutritionist tells you to do, because that is more important than this. Pretty much.
Yeah, well, notice how you're more concerned, I bet you, when you see the two, you're more concerned with which one will keep me thinner.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, it takes one to know one. It takes one like me to know one. Bullshit. So in recovery, for this to work, this is why I'm so excited that you called yourself out to start. It requires you tell yourself the brutal truth, the truth that makes you vulnerable, that kind of rips all of your, I like to call it armor. Take the armor off. It isn't serving you anymore. You're miserable with all of this armor, and you have to tell yourself the truth, even if it hurts, even if it exposes you to that fear that feels like you're going to get burned to death. Right? It's almost feels counterintuitive to admit the truth when you're in something like this, because the truth exposes this pain. Why would you do that? It's easier to lie to yourself and to just go into denial, right? But how long have you been in denial knowing that it's actually just enabling what you're doing that you don't want to do anymore?
Long time.
I know. So if you want to recover, and this is where I'm at, with you, my goal is to, and some people who watch these YouTube videos can't stand it. It gives them so much cognitive dissonance to listen to me. You understand why? It's like, because you're taking away your defense mechanisms against this horrendous fear you've been trying to avoid. It's so painful. This is a painful process. But on the other hand, if you don't go through the painful process, you are going to stay in your miserable, wretched life. Right? Do you see that clearly? I was thinking about our session today, and a couple things I wanted to make sure that I reinforced today with you is, do you see that the way that you've been doing this and what you've been chasing, that there is no way out? If you don't,
Yes.
Okay, it goes in circles. I didn't recognize that until the very, very, very end for me. Like I chased my tail believing that there would be a destination. And once I hit that destination, I believed my life would be altered forever. You know, if I become a certain thinness, I reach that thinness, the doors of heaven will open and my life will be free and it'll be beautiful and I will be real again, a real human being when I'm thinner. I can express myself like a destination, right? It's kind of like saying, when I graduate from college, I won't have to go to college again. That's true, correct? Unless you want to keep on going.
Correct.
But it's true. You get your certificate and you have no more credits that you have to pay for, right? That's a destination. Okay. When it comes to being thin or staying thin, do you see that this whole entire shit show, if you want to call it that, you have participated in only because you believed that at some point you would hit the destination?
Yes.
You do see that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I do. Yes.
Good. And that's what why would, and everything that you've done is really for that. Thinking at some point it will pay off. All of this work, I work hard, I'll achieve more. The more I work, the more I'll achieve and the better this will get. Right? Now, what does your evidence show you? Because you've been doing this for about 20 years now. What does reality tell you?
That there is no destination.
Do you,
whatever it is.
Yeah, like you haven't reached it yet.
Yeah.
Okay. How hard would you say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how hard have you worked and dedicated yourself to reaching that destination?
10.
But wouldn't you say 10 plus 2? Like you've got AP credit, like freaking out of this world. Like you, at this point, you should have a PhD in how to lose weight.
Absolutely.
Right? Honestly, don't you agree? If you really wanted to, you could easily get it done. You could do it.
Yes.
I know. Hard part is it's just miserable. You're fatiguing at this point. It's miserable.
Yeah.
It's like I have to go in that dungeon again. I get no pleasure. It is just dark. It's like going into complete isolation in your mind, right? And you've just fatigued. You're done. You can't do it anymore. So it's much harder to psychologically actually stay in that space. We talked about this yesterday because you're an adult. You have a job. You have a loving job. How do you give love to kids and, help when you're in total and complete, trauma in your own body? It's very difficult. Something's got to give, right? And that's where the bulimia becomes a functioning way to manage reality with your anorexia. Did you get that too after watching the YouTube video that okay, good. Like, holy shit, she's right. I am totally anorexic, and bulimia is anorexia. You're just managing reality. You can't isolate yourself unless you're super rich, or you live at home and someone takes care of you, then you can manage it, So the thing I think I really wanted to emphasize is, are you seeing that there is no escape? That even if you reach the destination with the numbers, with your size, with the clothes, with, the way your stomach looks, all of the weird, body checking that you're doing, even if you body check everything with such obsessiveness 20 times a day, and you're clearly hit the mark, right? Does that freedom actually exist? You know, the freedom in the destination that you thought would happen, the euphoria, does it really exist? Why?
No.
Why is that?
Because it's never good enough.
Well, and even if it is good enough, let's just imagine it is good enough. You've hit it. Why don't you get
then
that?
I'm like, because then I'm afraid that it's not going to last.
You got it. So now you become a slave to keeping it. And it is 10 times 10 worse. Because now you have paranoia. And you have even more, a darker, smaller space of existence. In fear of losing what you think you've reached. Even though you haven't reached it because you don't have any freedom. So you get the thinnerness, you hit the destination if you ever get there. Most people you're correct. You get there and you still feel inadequate. So you don't really get the adequacy you thought you'd get. You don't get this freedom. You don't get this sense of pride or like loving pride. You might get a sense of I'm superior to that person and that person, the narcissistic pride. Like you're winning, even though your life is a miserable hellhole. It's fleeting because you have to keep it. So you become defensive about it. Like super sketchy, shifty-eyed defense mechanisms. It's horrible, right? Don't you agree that's where the bulimia gets a lot worse?
Yeah.
A lot worse
Yeah.
is once you've lost weight, now you have to defend it. And so bulimia, through exercise, through diuretic abuse, through, purging, any type of purge really, is a form of, it's like part of armor. It's an armor of defense. Because if you lose your destination, it becomes like even more centrally focused in your face. And this is where like I binged 12 times a day because I was purging 12 times a day in fear of losing my thinness. But at the same time, trying to defend my humanness with food. All right, the conflict between being a human and a mammal that needs food and the narcissist in your mind that is superior to humanness, that is proving oneself as a superior being above the norm of all humanity, right? Do you connect with that?
Yes.
Yeah. So there is no escape. There is no escape in that.
There is no escape.
No. It's sad. I remember the moment I realized that, I was like, I have no alternative. I have no alternative then. If I am wanting relief from this torture, from the darkness, what it felt like to me was a cave, like a dark, 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 dark cave of isolation. What does it feel like to you?
That's where I've been. Like I've contemplated suicide.
Yes. Well, you're kind of getting where I was, which is there's no alternative. Either I am now in this forever, and this is my life. This is it. Or I commit suicide. That's where I was. I couldn't even breathe. I couldn't breathe another day doing what I was doing. I hit such a hard wall so fast. You can imagine if you were binging and purging, anywhere between 8 and 12 times a day, how quickly you'd come to that wall. Like, it is over. Yeah, I did. I had no hope. There was no light. And then you go to a therapist or someone that specializes in eating disorders, and they tell you you have a disease and you'll never recover. It's part of your genetics. What do you think that did? What do you think when I heard that? What do you think that did to me?
It just like, I don't know, I would think it would be crushing. Like,
it was. It was, because you're finally reaching out for help, right? Think about what it took for you to reach out for help. I mean, you have to be in a very, very desperate place of misery to do that. Don't you agree? I know I was. I was in such torture. It was so horrible, and you can't find a way to stop. You do everything you can in the way you think, in the way you are to stop. But the way you think it will go away is to be thinner. All right. Yes, it is insane. And so you make it worse and it gets worse. And so it does snowball, right? And you go and you think someone who's an expert. You believe this person must know what's going on. They must know what I'm going through. Did you ever feel that way?
Yeah, well, I wanted to, back in August, I wanted to get hospitalized or something.
Yeah, because you're dangerous to yourself, for sure. But you think when you hear, I'm going to go to someone that specializes in eating disorders, that they will understand, that they really grasp this. And when I went to get help and I was told, well, you have a disease. This is like an addiction. This is kind of your genetics, and you'll have this forever. You will struggle with this for the rest of your life. It was almost like they were inadvertently suggesting I commit suicide.
Yeah.
They weren't suggesting that, but they might as well have handed me a noose or a gun. But this is where I think I said this to you last in our consult. I said, I don't think these people have any clue how bad this is. Like, they don't realize how bad it is. If they did, I don't think they would have said that. I don't think they would have said, you're hopeless, sorry. Nothing will work for you. You're always going to feel this way. So let's talk about your feelings, and let's give you a meal plan.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Or like, how do you feel about the whole, like, I don't know if you've heard this, which probably you have, but the whole, like, concept of, like, ED.
Of what?
ED. Like, to refer to the eating disorder as, like, ED, another entity.
Oh,
so
I don't know. I think it's... Oh, yeah, I don't believe in that model. I think that model is so far off, and it's actually a sign that it's actually created by the people who are trying to help based on the fact that they don't know what to do and they suck at helping. The statistics are so bad. So they're creating these ideas like it's a disease, yes, because they're really not, they don't know what they're doing. And so instead of saying, I don't know what I'm doing, they're going to say, you have a disease. I just think that's my personal, because I recovered. And you know how many people I've worked with that have recovered? You're going to recover. And you're going to see it clearly. You're going to go, what the hell? They're so off. I'm like, I know. First of all, I believe this is a syndrome. I think it's a form of Stockholm syndrome. I think you have battered wife syndrome, but it's not a husband that's beating you up. It's the thin supremacy that is a belief system you hold yourself to. You know, all this takes is that you leave your cult. It's like cult brainwashing. That's what you have. And with brainwashing, once the person that's been brainwashed sees the abusiveness and sees that they have attached their life and survival to something that is a lie and a fraud and that is completely causing their suffering, they leave and instantly they recover. It's like the syndrome dissipates. And with syndromes, it's as the main source that kind of ties all those symptoms together. It's like the center of a wheel is removed, the whole wheel falls apart. That's how they describe it. Anyway, so that's how you're going to experience recovery. It's going to be almost instant. And it's going to blow your mind. Because what you've been doing to try to recover has been so tedious. It's just like, you'll never recover. And then that just validates them saying, well, you have a disease. So yeah, no, I don't believe in that disease model. I think it's actually not going to go anywhere. You're not going to get anywhere with that model. Because it doesn't actually address the underlying issues. It's just basically labeling your consequences. What does that do for getting rid of your consequences? Just by saying, here's what you're doing. This is what you do. Is that going to help you in any way? Not at all. Of course you know what you're doing. Why do you need to tell me this is what I'm doing? Yes, I'm obsessing about my weight, and I'm compulsively binging and compulsively purging. Yeah. Help me to stop. And they don't know what to tell you other than, well, I'm sorry, you have a disease. And, and I just think it's incredibly enabling, and it actually endangers the psychological state of the person they tell it to. Yeah, so there you have that. So let's get back to you.
Yes.
So one of the things that was really important for me and for every single person I work with that does recover is they see that there is no exit. The way you're doing it, this is the way it is. It doesn't get better than this. There is no, you're chasing a mirage. That mirage does not exist, right? Because the mirage is that you'll be thinner and free from this torture. That once you're thin, you will be complete. Everything will feel better, and you won't be so crazy. And you and I are both aware that that doesn't exist, because you may hit that thinnerness, but you cannot stop what you've been doing to hit it. So you are now a permanent slave to even more increasing restrictions, increasing paranoia, and increasing impulsivity to binge. And the only way to get back to that weight is to purge. And that's where the bulimic behavior comes in, is when you are not stabilizing your thinness or managing your starvation very well. So bulimia serves as a way to cope for struggling starvation. You wouldn't exercise 2 hours if you weren't struggling with your eating. Right? So even if you get to that thinness, you will never be released from this torture. Is there any part of you that is still thinking, no, there's hope, I can still do it? I'll be thin first. Let me be thin first, and then we'll work on this. Is there any of that?
No.
Yeah. So that has to be apparent to you. I know I'm saying it out here. I'm over here in Idaho, and you're over there in New York. But what I'm describing has to be apparent to you, not just apparent to me and me describing it to you. You have to see it within even if it sucks, it's painful. This would be like finding out that your spouse is cheating on you and you thought he was innocent, and the willingness to admit and see it for what it is and not excuse it, not enable it, not adjust and adapt so you can be in denial. It's like you need to see this without any denial. Is the thinnerness without the suffering for you? Does that even exist? Does the thinnerness without the suffering exist for you?
Not at this moment.
Okay, notice how you went into denial. I knew it was going to happen. Not right now, but there's that next thing that I want to do. Is that really what you want to do? No. Okay, so I need you to open your eyes to this. Like, what are you waiting for? I'm positioning you to look at this. It's really important you open your mind right now. Don't keep it closed. Okay, so what it'll feel like is like I'm bringing in the monster into the room, and you're like, okay, I'm here with the monster. And I'm like, no, you have to look at it. And you're like, okay, I'm looking at it, Robin. I've taken the covers off, and you're covering your eyes, and you're going, yeah, but your eyes are closed. You're covering them with your hands, and then I say, okay, remove your hands. And you're like, look, Robin, I'm looking at the monster, but your eyes are shut. And then you're like, okay, I'm looking at the monster, but you turn your head and you look away, so you can only see it in your peripheral vision. And I'm like, no, look at the goddamn monster. This is all it takes is the one time you look at it. You honestly face it. That's what I'm asking you to do right now. You need to face it. Okay. Is it possible for you to reach your thinnerness without this suffering? I need you to open your mind to what that answer is in truth. If it's not, I know, but I want you to really think about this. If it is true that you'll never reach it, don't you want to know? Because if you don't know, then you're dedicating yourself, your entire life, to this horrible, horrible, horrible life for nothing. Thinking you're going to get something that if you just look at it, you'll see that you can't get it. It's not even realistic. It's not an option. Make sense? It's like saying, no, my husband's not cheating. No, my husband's not cheating. No, my husband's not cheating. No, and in complete denial while he's clear as day cheating on you. What are you wasting your time in denial when in reality, at some point, you're going to recognize he's doing it. And then like 10 years later, you're going to admit it? When you knew 10 years earlier. Do you see what I'm saying? Yeah. You can draw this sucker out and make it miserable longer, or you can just face it and get it over with. It's painful. It's going to be painful for you to look at this. You'll feel it in your throat. It's going to hurt. You might feel nauseous because your stomach feels like I can't. You know what? But I want you to really think of this. Can you handle the truth? Considering what you've been handling, which one's harder, the truth or what you've been doing to avoid it? To avoid the truth. Think of everything you do to avoid the truth. You can handle that. Yeah. And that is like abusiveness, right? Yeah. 2 hours of intense cardio, you can do that. But look at the truth of what I'm telling you. That's painful. That's what you haven't done yet. That's the one thing you haven't done yet. And I'm going to ask you again. And I need you to open to your mind to the truth. Don't say what you think I want to hear. That's not going to get you anywhere. If you want to see it this way, I'm not your teacher. I'm not your mom. I am guiding you to do what I did. I'm not doing it for you. I'm not making you do it. That's really important too, that you do not feel like Robin is making me do it. I'm just going to do what she says. Oh my God, I hope it works out. No, you have to feel so done with your misery that you are willfully doing what I'm asking you to do. Willfully. Even if it's painful. You ready to look at this? Okay. Tell yourself the truth. Is there any way for you to reach the thinnerness that you've been wanting without this dark suffering? Is there any truth in it? No. Mm-mm. How does that feel? It hurts. It's painful. But you know what's really painful? Chasing something and devoting your entire life to something that doesn't exist. How much longer can you chase this mirage? How much longer can you do this? Continue to chase it. How much longer? I need an answer. How much longer can you do this? Days? Months? I mean, you tell me.
Years.
For me, it was, I can't even do it another second. I'm going to commit suicide within days.
Yeah.
Okay, so what do you think? When I had to look at that, it was either look at the truth or you're going to kill yourself. Which one would you rather? So how much longer can you do this? Insanity. How much longer? How many days can you handle your entire mental focus being on how to be thinner? And all the drama.
I can't. Not like that. I'm like losing myself.
Yeah. So you either continue to avoid the truth or you face it.
Yeah.
Why don't we face it? Let's go into the factual truth about what you're doing. Just factual truth. Does it exist that you can be the thinner body that you have been chasing and have that thinner body, and for you to be free and happy and relaxed and completely free from the eating disorder? Is it possible?
Not for me.
It's not. In fact, I don't know anybody who wants it with that reasoning that is free. I don't know anybody. Once someone becomes narcissistic about it, they suffer with it. There are plenty of people out there who are thin, but they don't care. And they don't even care if they gain weight. They don't care. They're indifferent about it. Do they suffer? No, because they don't care. Whether they gain or lose or anything in between. They're indifferent about it, right? So once someone becomes, latched onto it with narcissistic superiority, now, that wanting to be thin, can you feel it this way? I want you to perceive it this way and feel it this way. The feeling of wanting thinness, or wanting to be thinner than you are, or wanting to be thin and hold thinness. Can you exist with wanting that and recover?
No.
Nope, it's impossible.
Yeah.
It's impossible. You can see that clear?
Yes.
Yeah. So in order for you to get your freedom, okay, so I want you to go inside this freedom and what that is. What would your life be like? What would it feel like? Or tell me this. How relieving would it be if you were given the keys to freedom from caring about your weight, thinking about your weight, from your weight being important in any way? You're free from it basically becomes a nothingness in your life, like a zero. From the guilt around food, shame around food, controlling your food becomes indifferent. Where you're permanently given freedom from this torture and from your weight being your center of your life forever. How would that feel?
Oh, gosh. Freeing, exhilarating. I could actually, have a life, be present, be available.
How would you feel to the space that gives you that freedom? Let's just imagine a genie comes and says, I am granting you this wish, to where your body is permanently not in your business. How would you feel to that person that gave you that freedom, to the genie?
Grateful.
Indebted? Intense love?
Yeah.
I know. That's not me. That's the existence of what we want, whatever you want to call it. For me, it was God. It was like consciousness. It was something that gave me this space of being, and I knew it existed. Just like you felt that existence. You felt would be freeing. You actually were describing what that space would feel like. I could be real. I could just have a life, whatever that is. I don't even know yet, right? That's just complete infinite space of possibility. You could feel that, right?
Yeah.
That's what recovery feels like. That's what recovery is. Which one do you want? You can be thin, but it becomes with your torture. You cannot separate this darkness from the thinness. It doesn't exist without it. Or you can have freedom. That freedom from not caring, not worrying about it. It's not important anymore. It's none of your business. You don't have to manage it. It's irrelevant.
Freedom.
I want you to take that wanting of thinness. That there's a feeling of want or will, right? Do you want the thinness if you see clearly it's attached to intense suffering? On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most horrific suffering, where would you rate this suffering?
10.
Yeah, it's worthy of suicide. That's where I was. I would agree with you. It got to a 10. Was it always a 10 for me? No. But it got there. And once it got there, I didn't know how to leave it.
No.
Yeah. You feel like you're in the same space?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's unrelenting. It's incessant. It's relentless. There's no way to get out. You're just stuck.
Yeah. Well, that's. I feel like the last 4 months, like maybe I was like lying to myself or fooling myself, thinking, and then the last 2 weeks, like it's just like no, we didn't go anywhere.
No.
Right here and stronger.
Same place. Yeah, totally. So there is only one way out. There is one way. How do you get out?
How do I get out?
There's one way. You have one option. It's down. It's going out the bottom. And what does that mean for you? Well, there's two. You can commit suicide.
Yeah.
Okay. What's the other one?
Just gain weight.
Mm-hmm. And be okay with it. That's the key. The key is being okay with it. That's the cost. Like the cost of that freedom, right? Because you don't get that freedom at this point for free. It's almost like you signed a contract with the devil, didn't you? So to get out of it, it's going to cost something, isn't it? You're a slave to the devil. I think you are in purgatory. I've been there too. It's the darkest, darkest pits of hell where there is no escape. Dante's Inferno, the bottom of Dante's Inferno, there is no escape. It is the pits of hell. And it is pretty demonic. You signed a contract with the devil. You said, I want superiority I'm willing to suffer. I'm willing to work. It's like, imagine you're in hell, a slave to starving yourself and a slave to isolating yourself from reality. And you're on machinery. I mean, it's like torture chamber, right? Because you wanted the thinness and you got your thinness, but you can't leave the cage. You can't leave that level of hell anymore. You can't leave. You can't escape it. Because your desire for thinness is keeping you held hostage to it. You have chosen to stay for the thinness. Because you have this illusion. It's like a mirage in your mind. It's a fantasy that the thinness will pay off. That all of this torture And all of this carnage and damage and darkness will eventually get you heaven. But you'll never escape. And why is that? Why is that? Why can't you escape? I mean, you signed a contract with the devil saying that you're willing to do all of this for thinness, thinking that the thinness would bring you heaven. But you got your thinness, and why can't you escape? Why can't you escape hell? Do you know the answer?
I don't know.
Well,
because I'm a slave to it.
Well, you're a slave to it because you're not willing to gain weight. That's why. Yeah. That's why. You're staying in hell. You have stayed in hell for a long time. You refuse to leave it. Why you refuse to leave something that is so demonic? Let's talk about this space on a scale of 1 to 10. Is this something you should be proud of? Would you tell other people to join you?
No.
So is it really something that's worthwhile? Is it really worth it? Is the thinness, even if you've reached thinness, is this really worth it? Is the thinness really worth this? Is what you get out of it, the pride, the superiority, is it worth hell that you're in?
No.
So I would agree. It's like, but you didn't know that when you committed to this. You thought that it would get better, and it doesn't. It gets worse, right? And then you keep on thinking, well, when I'm thinner, I'll feel better, and it gets worse. And eventually you're at the 10. You're in hell. You got down further and further and further, refusing to surrender in total and complete pride. I don't want people to know. I don't want people to think I'm a failure, so your pride sinks you deeper. Right? Yeah. Anyway, so here we are. I'm saying, well, there's no way for you to get out unless you are willing to give up your thinness. If you give up the thinness, what happens to all of the torture, the darkness, the misery, the limits, the closure, the being closed off, being disconnected, not being able to breathe, feelings of complete and total paralysis because of anxiety and fear of gaining weight? What happens to all that?
When I give up?
Yeah, when you pay the cost to get out. The cost to get out is gaining weight. Are you willing to gain weight? And it's permanent. It's not temporary. You need to see that too. That's a really important part of this process, is that when you pay the dues of gaining weight to get out, you are paying it permanently. Do you see why? Why would it need to be permanently accepting it, the weight gain?
Because it'll just be a matter of time before it comes back, before it all comes back.
Yeah, you go back in hell, totally. All of it, and it's worse. It's actually worse the next time you go back down.
Yeah, because you've had relief, you know what it's like, you've had freedom, and now you're choosing to walk back in.
Yes, that's like the binging and then the purging, and the binging and the purging. You've done that many times when you said, fuck it, I'm going to binge, and now I'm going to purge. You go back into hell. Binging is like a temporary, it's like a temporary moment of freedom. That's what binging is. It's like, I just need release. I just need to escape this for 2 seconds. Just give me a second. Boom, you get released, and then all of a sudden you're like, but I'm going to be fat. And then all of a sudden you go back down in hell. Bad. So this has to be made permanent. So if you're, I want you to look at the cost now. Let's look at it as if this is a decision that you might actually make. What if you gain 50 pounds? 50 pounds. Just from eating like quote unquote normal. Okay, just a normal human being. because you're free, right? Living in that world of freedom where you no longer have to micromanage, you no longer live in shame and guilt, the food is no longer moralized as if it's a sin. You no longer have to do anything about eating food. You can just eat food like a normal animal should. Dogs, cats, animals eat. I don't know if you knew that. You get to be one now. Right? And you don't have to be a slave to doing anything about it. Right? So you get complete and total freedom from the dark, demonic hell of obsessive compulsive dieting and exercising, right? And what's going to happen to your body in exchange for that freedom?
It's going to get fat.
Yeah, you are. You should expect it. Okay? Are you open to that? I mean, so this is what I want you to look at. What would it be like to be fat? What would it be like? The physicality. Let's look at the reality of fatness. What would it be like? Would you be a different person? What would it be like to be in a fat body? What would it be like? Just start with feel. How would it feel?
I would feel uncomfortable.
Well, I don't know about that. I'm pretty sure you're uncomfortable on a treadmill for 2 hours. And no, it is true. You need to see this because I thought the same thing. I thought it would be so heavy. Well, I'm basically creating equal exhaustion with my exercise.
Yeah.
So I might as well be 500 pounds because that's about the amount of exhaustion I'm trying to create is a 500-pound exhaustion. But is it really that bad? Is it really that bad? Which one would you rather? So you see where you have to open your mind to looking at the fatness as if it's real. You have to see it from reality's perspective. And then compare it to where you're at and what you're doing. Right? So your first response was uncomfortable. Okay, well, let's compare that physical discomfort to your psychological and physical discomfort from what you're doing. Don't forget the bulimia, right? Don't forget the teeth that you're destroying and the esophagus that you're destroying. Don't forget all that. The cuts on your knuckles. Don't forget that. When we look at the physicality of one or the other. Extreme exhaustion. Don't forget you have PCOS now. You know what I'm saying?
Very anemic.
Yeah, I mean, so you're prone to have heart failure. Yeah, right now. Yeah, look at what you've done to your body. Just compare the two. The physicality of gaining 50 pounds, wearing larger clothes, being a little heavier against gravity, or the physicality of what you're doing. I want you to give yourself an honest comparison of which one is worse. Which one should you be more scared of? If you had someone, let's just say a 20-year-old girl, which one would you say she should be more scared of?
The obsession with being thin.
Oh, hell yeah. That's like murder.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say you're better off just letting your body be what it is? Yeah. You're better off 50 pounds heavier. That would be so easy. That's like preschool. Yeah. Don't you agree?
I saw it. I saw it. Yeah, I saw it with the young girls in the group that I was in.
Okay, so go into your life. Go into what your life will be like when this body is bigger. And don't be conservative. Do you see why I went up 50 pounds? Why I would do that?
Yeah.
Why would I do that?
That's true. Because it could be that much.
It could be much higher than that, but it's because I don't want to leave even 1 ounce of hope in your mind to be thin. So I go way high.
Yeah.
You could go up to 100 pounds even. I went to 500 because I was that bad in terms of the, I was going to die. And that was how bad it was psychologically. So, you know, the physical paralysis that someone would be in at 500 pounds?
Yeah.
That would be paralyzing, right?
Yeah.
That's how paralyzed my entire life was in the perfect body. That I was within days of killing with suicide. That's how paralyzed my entire existence was. It's useless. What type of life is that? I mean, you might as well die because there's no point. What's the point? So when it came to being 500 pounds and free to just exist and to sit on a park bench and to watch the birds, do you know how beautiful that felt just thinking about that? That I could be free to just watch the birds. Just watch people. Do you know what that felt like to me? It felt like I was alive again.
Yeah.
So to be 500 pounds and have that freedom was the best decision I have ever made. To this day, if God came to me and said, "Okay, Robin, it's time for you to pay that," I would say, "Oh, any day I am willing." Because the paralysis I lived in, not worth it. There is no existence. You have to ask yourself the same question. You have to go into yourself and you need to ask the same question. Is gaining 50 pounds as bad? Is it really that bad? Especially if I'm so willing to do that, if I would rather do that, that means I'm free. That means I have my life back. That means I have the ability to sit on a park bench and watch people all day if I want to. What are you willing to pay to recover? Are you willing to be in a fat body forever, permanently? If for permanent freedom from this. Does that sound like something you're willing to do for your life and to exist again? You need to feel it within yourself. It has to come from within you. You have to say that and feel it within yourself. I'm over here and I'm describing you what I had to go through and the decisions I made. I can't make that decision for you. I cannot make you do it. So what I'm directing you to do is feel that out. If I'm willing to allow this body to become whatever it is, and if whatever it really is at this point is 500 pounds or 300 pounds or 200 pounds or whatever that is, are you willing to give it the grace to be that? And if you're willing to give it the grace to be that, you realize that that's how much freedom you have. That is how much freedom you get. You're free until whatever weight that is that you say is your limit. I decided I was willing to go up to 500 pounds, and that was my limit. If I got to 500 pounds, my life will be paralyzed physically. Even then, I felt freer in that concept at 500 pounds than I did at the perfect size, the perfect body, right? I hit the destination, and it was hell. The worst, darkest, loneliest place in purgatory.
For me, when I was growing up and I was eating I think it was a family member that said, don't eat that because you're going to wake up tomorrow and be 300 pounds. In a joking manner. And I feel like that always just stuck with me. And,
well, what's your answer today?
You know, that's my biggest fear. It's like,
okay, what's your answer today? What's your answer today?
So,
what's your answer today to that?
Well, like what you're saying right now, it's like,
I would rather be 300 pounds.
Yeah. If I could wake up tomorrow, be 300 pounds, but be free of it, be able to walk away of this hell, like, then so be it.
Well, doesn't that sound great? Doesn't mean you have to love. You don't have to, you know.
I don't.
It just means you're free to not care, you know.
Yeah, like it just scares it scares that like that the words are even coming out of my mouth. It's like who are you?
We're closing the deal right now. We're closing the game, dearie. And I do want to ask, what should you be more scared of? What you're doing, what you're living in, or accepting the possibility and the willingness to be fat? Which one should you be more scared of?
What I'm doing right now.
I know. It is horrible. Horrible. Absolutely terrible. Nobody who has ever existed on this planet should have to suffer to this degree just to feel acceptable to anybody. Not one human being is worth this type of suffering for. Can I get an amen?
Amen.